Hey kids, do you like wrestling? Well, we like wrestling too. We are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Myself and Chris Novembrino kind of doing a lazy river of wrestling criticism, going through the news and whatever happened in stateside television wrestling. And also, you know what? Sometimes we just like to watch old stuff and talk about that too. Love for you to give us a listen. If you haven't already, we are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
Hola, hola, my name is Ricardo. I am the host of the Lucha Jovers podcast here in the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. We are a Spanish speaking show dedicated to discussing and analyzing pro wrestling from all across the world. From AEW to CMLL, we talk about American wrestling, Japanese wrestling, and of course, Lucha Libre. If something big happened in the pro wrestling world, we will talk about it. So if you know Spanish or have a friend that knows Spanish or want to practice your Lucha Libre pronunciations, go listen to the Lucha Jovers podcast right here in the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. Nos vemos por ahí.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Hey there, Thunder Buddies and Travellers down Thunder Road. It's us, Days of Thunder, the WCW Thunder Rewatch podcast that you didn't ask for, but we did anyway, coming to as part of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network and powered by alargemanapears.com. I'm your party host, your troubadour on Thunder Road, Dave Ryan, and I'm joined by a co-host again this week, a first-time appearance on the show from Voices of Wrestler contributor Joey O'Doherty. How are you, my friend?
I'm very good, as you very said. I think I had a very fast and furious day today, not unlike your fast and furious day.
I think yours might have been faster and more furious than mine.
For those who don't know what I'm talking about, I became a father this morning, so it's been a pretty hectic day. Woohoo.
Breaking news. That's what Days of Thunder is known for. Breaking paternity news left, right and centre.
No, it's really good to be a dad again, and again I've got the adrenaline in my soul, maybe a bit unlike Cody, and I won't be going to sleep tonight. She's in hospital, so I've got time on my hands to go ahead and have a look at some Thunder. Yeah,
is there what is your because I've actually, for maybe the first time, I was telling you before we came on that I'll be 34 in a couple of weeks, and my entire life I have never really had trouble sleeping. I can pretty much, I just pop in, one headphone, or now that I'm an old man, I have those, sleep headphones that go around you like a headband, so that it's not uncomfortable lying on my side with a headphone in, and I put on, a podcast or something like that, and I'm gone within about 5 or 10 minutes. But the last couple of weeks, I had this weird restlessness at night. What do you have? Obviously, you're full of adrenaline right now. So, what would be your go-to thing to unwind in the evening if you were looking to kind of get some sleep in?
Dave, ever since I became a father 8 years ago, I'm gonna go to this father, shtick every 5 minutes today, because that's all I'm in.
It's your brand. Lean into it, man.
Yeah, that's it. I've never had a problem sleeping since then. They wear you out. You get up early for school. You bring them to training.
No. Yeah.
8 years.
Right. Okay. So I have at least a minimum of 9 months of sleeplessness left if I can't find an alternate strategy.
Well, maybe wait for don't jump into it straight.
Yeah, I'm not going to
romance the girl first.
Yeah. Darling, I've been thinking about it, and I just really like a sleep. So, it's weird. It's I've always been kind of a nocturnal person, and I think that goes back to the days of watching Raw live and some of that when I was in college. That pretty much since I was 18, it's like I go to bed between 2 and 3 a.m. and I like my work suits that lifestyle very good because I don't have to start until 11 a.m. usually at the earliest. Which is pretty good. You know, I'm not wrecked, but I've never have trouble sleeping. But just the last week or two, it's a really weird thing. Maybe it's the dread of I know what's coming in 1999 Thunder, and there's this like existential thing keeping me awake. What are you sure you want to do this?
That cloud of Vince Russo just hanging over you.
Yeah, that could be it. Like
he's coming. He's coming.
I know. Like,
my own advice would be pre-having children, go for a run.
Yeah.
Maybe you use around 8:30, maybe 9. Like I used to like to get out for a run as much as I could, and a good 30 minutes, and just to get the juices flowing a bit, and you might just.
Do you know, I'm a big swimmer, but my my gym is like, it's great because it's about a 10-minute walk from my house, but the pool closes at 8:30. Which sucks. Wow. Like that's normally when I'm getting home
really
from
early,
work. Yeah, like that really does not suit me. But look, we'll figure it out. I've run out of now, because what I was doing the last while, the podcast I was on I was binging all the Deadlock podcasts, and they're kind of like reviews of classic wrestling and stuff. Because I'm trying to. The thing that's tough about doing this is, anytime a podcast I listen to hits WCW in this period, I have to stop listening to it. Because I don't want that cross-pollination of like stealing someone's gags. Yeah, stealing someone's gags, stealing someone's takes. I don't want that. So like they've done a few that are in this kind of timeline, and I've kind of had to like skip around it. But I'll find something else, something less sad than I think Elden Ring lore videos were my one before that. That's just there's a deep sickness. I can't really excuse it. But Joey, enough about me. Let's talk about you. So you're in the co-pilot's chair for this podcast, and I'm going to ask you what I asked Aaron a couple of weeks ago, and that's to describe to us, I suppose, the history of your fandom in terms of wrestling in general, and then where WCW enters into the equation for you.
Well, first of all, I remember what you said 2 weeks ago to Erin, that she was top of your list. I surely was bottom of your list, probably just after WWE Garrett, I imagine. I was definitely never going to be there. Erin's a great guest. She was fantastic.
Erin put in the hard yards of being like one of the first people I remember frequently in the mentions on Twitter when we started this thing. So it would have been remiss of us to reach out into the Thunder Buddies and not go with Erin.
Oh, and she's connected the dots then with, Randy Savage and Kevin Nash and Wilder feuding all the way back to Survivor Series in 1993. Like, it makes so much sense. Yeah. Or no sense.
Yeah. It's WCW. It can make all the sense and no sense all at once.
It is what you make of it, that's it. Like every week there's going to be something different that probably wasn't, very much, thought of the week before. And it's just, let's just throw this at the wall and see what sticks. And let's throw it again and see if it sticks again. Yeah. Who knows? But to answer your original question, my fandom with WCW really didn't really come in the terms of actual watching the wrestling. From me, I was a very poor Irishman. As you can imagine, WWE was mostly, for most people, the only game in town. Like I know yourself, maybe you used to have the satellite feed of TNT. Some people did, but I wasn't very fortunate at that. So my WCW fandom came from either the odd Saturday show on ITV, or potentially just reading about it, and probably around from 98, maybe to obviously this demise, reading Power Slam magazines and getting up to speed exactly who Sting is, who Goldberg is. Like these are people that in these magazines, these were larger in life and they looked shit cool, and I just had no access to them. So like it really wasn't until the network really came around to actually go back and watch a few pay-per-views, or watch a couple of night shows. I think I watched one Thunder in my actual life until this particular episode. So it's been a journey.
Yeah, sorry about that in advance.
Yeah.
But you come at a very interesting time, and this is like it's funny because it's like it's almost the perfect era of the show to have guest hosts on, because we're in this. I was kind of describing it on the last episode with Aaron, where we've firmly left the period where I think you could have turned things around easily for WCW, but we've not yet entered death rattle era. That's Russo.
I think wrestling's always very easy to recover once there's not too much lasting damage. Like, I think just in recent memory, you look at like Miro and his gamer character, for example, and how that was absolutely terrible. But a couple of weeks later, a bit of absence from Miro, came back as the Redeemer, and you can see how easily fans just forgot about the absolutely crap gimmick he had. And I think in WCW, like, it never really got to the change where if things were to change to a certain degree that they could really forget about the past. It got to the stage, especially in this particular area, where things were just going downhill very slowly, and it was very hard to stop that.
I think it's tough. I think it's tough for them as well, because AEW don't have to contend now with, like, I can change the channel to an incredibly hot product like with WCW, where, like, if Thunder, or like if Nitro isn't doing it for me, if it's another dog shit 3-hour Nitro, I can switch over to the Nashville network and something crazy is happening on Raw, because we've got
Raw was particularly hot this particular period. Like, you got Jericho, who's just probably about to pop up on the screen. You've got The Rock, Triple H. They're really hitting their stride. It's a really different story for what's going on in Titan Towers compared to what's happening.
So, like, we're in AEW is like, I think a lot of the fans give, like, a Miro or whoever else, like, a lot of rope, because I don't think a lot of the regular AEW people are people that are going to be likely to go back over to WWE anytime soon. I think, like, their core is going to be made up of people who are just, what WWE presents to them is long since past what they're interested in, with, like, some rare exceptions, I'm sure. But it is a fair point that, like, I do think that in some areas I've noticed WCW touring still at this point, they haven't given up. The fans haven't given up on the company, but they're just begging for anything. Like, just give us a morsel of the stuff that we started attending these shows for. And WCW just don't seem partial to give them anything. There are some things that succeed.
There's a lot of potential there, Dave. Even just looking at Thunder, like, there is people and talent there that you can use in a positive way. They just don't.
Yeah, like, it's the same old story with them. Is like, there's so many people that, like, since we started the podcast, and, like, that's only 98. Like 98, 99, you've got loads of people who you can see getting hot organically with the crowd to the point where they could pull the trigger on them and make a new guy. Like, maybe not a Stone Cold Rock level guy, but a guy, like a big star. And they've made one in this time in Goldberg and fucked it. But what happens with everybody bar Goldberg is that before they pull the trigger and put the belt on the guy, it's like they keep them in the holding pattern so long, because whoever it is on top, like Nash or Hogan or whoever, just doesn't want to share that plinth with anybody. And by the time it gets to, we might as well go with this guy, they've cooled off. It is incredibly frustrating seeing how over some of these guys are, and how much the crowd and the organic direction of things is telling them, like, it's flat out giving them answers to their problems, and they can't hear it and they can't see it, or they won't. There's
been so many people you can see that's even just before this period in WCW that, like you say, they've missed the boat on. But like you say, by the time they do pull the trigger, the chance is gone. And it's not just a once-off occurrence. This happens habitually, going throughout WCW's history. Like, and it's not just a problem that's confined to WCW. WWF are very much guilty of that.
Yes.
Sort of same, booking flaw sometimes, but probably not just to the same extent. But, like, Lex Luger, for example, the time for him was SummerSlam '93, and it just, that was it. And the law of diminishing returns is just, fans didn't give a shit going forward, and thankfully, probably for fans at the time, he wasn't given that push afterwards. Maybe Vince just didn't see it from that point forward, but at the same time, Luger, there was potential there. He had it. He had the fans. He had, like, the Lex Express. I don't know about you, but, like, at the time, I felt this guy was the next Hogan. At the time when he was facing Yokozuna at SummerSlam, I thought this is the pinnacle for him. That he's going to get this, and it just didn't happen. It ended like a bit of a wet fart in the end, and at the end, look where he was a year later. He was in a tag team with British Bulldog, and he was doing that gimmick with the Million Dollar Man and Tatanka. Like, it just, what could have been.
Yeah, like Lex Express was like slightly before my time as a fan, because it's like, so I came in
showing my age.
I know, I came in '96.
89 for me. I'm such an old bastard.
Brett and Sean was me getting in, and like, I, even though I was getting in that, I can totally see, like, going back when I've looked at any of the Lex era stuff, I'm just like, how did you not, like, even if you didn't see in him what you saw in a Hogan or whoever else, the crowds were telling you that they wanted it, so, like, you should have, you know, and like, still to this day, that company is doing that kind of stuff, like we saw with, like, just this year with Sammy and then Cody. Is like the crowd were telling you they were ready for Roman to drop the belt, and it was the perfect, like, crescendo of story. And how rarely do you get that twice in a month, where you get to, like, you could have the perfect dismount from this long running story you've backed yourself into a corner on. But even with just on Lex, before we move on, like, Lex was still so over that when they would put the belt on him in WCW, it was a huge thing. Like, when he won the belt on Nitro, it's one of the biggest Nitro moments of all time. And he's still, like, he's showing up periodically when they remember he's on the roster and get him out on a Nitro or Thunder in this period of time in '99. Like, he still gets huge reactions. So, like, even though he wasn't worth a fuck in the ring, definitely in '99 anyway, he's still, like, would have been a big attraction at the top of the card, even if it wouldn't have been tremendously entertaining to watch bell to bell.
Like, he was presented like a star. Like, again, like, I go back to as a WWF guy from back in that era, and I'd be flicking through the magazines and I'd look at guys like Luger and Sting, and, like, they appeared like they were big deals. They were presented to me as a fan. I was like, I want to check these guys out. I just have no means to do it, really, or didn't have a friend that had it. So for me, I look at these guys and I think automatically these guys have an aura. Their WCW are making these guys look cool. The whole aesthetic of WCW at the time, for me anyway, it looked like it was very interesting. And, like, anytime I did get to see the likes of Sting in action, or, like, Buff Bagwell, for example, even though, like again, Buff Bagwell, he's not exactly the pinnacle of wrestling, but he looked like he was presented to a star, and he had that charisma that he could present himself as something more than a big deal. But just, again, booking never really followed suit.
And he's one of the ones that, like, it stands to your point of, like, you can heat people back up again. It's never completely over, because this little run he's on now, they've heated him up quite a bit. Like, not to this guy is going to win the world title level, but, you know, they've had him get the better of Flair and the boys, like, very frequently of late, and, like, got a clean pin over Flair, which doesn't happen that often even now in '99. So you absolutely can do it if you want, which just speaks to their kind of having the blinders on. And, like, you know, we've done the laundry list before, me and Lee on the show, about, like, just in the 98 to where we are now, you've had opportunities to do something, like, at different levels, not all world title levels, but, like, you've had moments with Dean, with Jericho, with Saturn, with Raven, with DDP, with Booker T is the one that, like, they do eventually go with Booker T. They did eventually go with DDP, but by the time they did, it's not as special as if they had struck while the iron was hot. And particularly DDP's case, where by the time they make him a multiple time world champion, they've turned him heel, which nobody wanted. It's just bizarre. And, like, it's one of the great what ifs for me would have been, what if they went Booker a year earlier?
Yeah, like, Booker was really at one stage in probably around 99, if I recall correctly, like, he was starting to gather really good big momentum. He was starting to, like, you know, lose the Harlem Heat stink, for lack of a better word. I don't think really stink is probably the correct term, but he was starting to show himself as, this is a guy. He can be presented the star. He has something, but just it never got over that hump. And by the time it got to the hump, I think it was 2000. It just didn't. He felt like a lesser guy. He felt like they're only going with him because the other guys are gone or they're out of the picture.
And in 2000, they're already, like, hot-shotting the world title around every 5 minutes, so it wasn't special anymore.
When you get to that era, man, it's just going to get so confusing to people who weren't in that era to watch it.
The fact that, like, in the last, you know, 10, 12 months of that promotion, Booker manages to get 5 title reigns, and he's not even one of the guys they ever considered a top guy. Tells you
how many resets do they have in that period?
Only one of them was good, I'll tell you that. And it was only good for one episode, but again, that's something we will get to. I don't know about you, Joey, but you ready to talk about some Thunder?
I am indeed.
Let's do it. This is Thunder episode 69. Nice. From Lafayette, Louisiana. 1st of July, 1999. We are down below the 3 mark in ratings. This got a 2.7. Dipping. Trouble ahead. I don't know about you, Joey. I'm worried about World Championship Wrestling.
No, you're gonna. It's gonna spike around. Ooh, 2001.
Yeah, new boom period right on the way. So Tenay immediately throws to Nitro, and we see Nash defending the title against insurmountable odds, where just a small army of people appeared to be interfering in this match. Classic Nitro. I spotted, I don't know if you spotted anybody else, but I spotted Team Madness, Flair, Piper, Arn, the entire Jersey Triad, and the woman now identified as Tori Wilson. For the first time. She's no longer Samantha. I am quite sure, I haven't watched this Nitro, but I'm quite sure that no references to her being previously Samantha were ever made. It was just, there's Tori.
That's fine. I don't mind that. I can buy that, because I wouldn't have remembered her as Samantha too much myself.
I wish I didn't remember Samantha. But yes, so the segment ends with Nash wielding a cattle prod, abducting Gorgeous George, and then Tori, who had initially been out with the heels, deciding to go voluntarily with Nash and his hostage. And then we see Sting, big quote Sting, looking on from a Sting from the wing mirror of a Hummer. Yes, folks, there will be more Hummer chat on this program.
There's a lot to dissect from that Nitro recap. First of all, my first thoughts is Arn Anderson is doing his best football on the groin impression.
Yeah. God bless. I'd love to have picked Arn's brain around this time and what he thought of all this. Because at least, you know that Flair, from everything Flair said since, Flair was already checked out. And he was just collecting his paycheck, and he was just hoping that maybe his son would get a decent payday, and that's kind of all he was mentally in it for in WCW by '99. After all the unpleasantness with Bischoff was settled, but Arn, being such a Roslyn guy, seeing this whole place crumble around him, just penny for his thoughts during some of these segments.
It's fascinating to see how, say just for example, 10 years ago in WWE from 2023, things aren't that dramatically different, but 10 years from WCW, it's a completely different era, different setup, different mindset. It's to be Arn Anderson, to go from that transition to be with this company the whole time, more or less. I think it's beyond the Brainbusters going to WWF at the time. This is such a different ball game. This is a different field altogether.
And he was still actively wrestling until right before Thunder started. So he kind of, as a wrestler, had it not been for injury, would probably still be wrestling during this era of Nitro and Thunder. I don't know what that looks like.
If you look at '93 compared to now, that's 6 years. It's not that big a period when you think about it, and it's crazy to see the contrast between I think it was Rick Rude at the time, WCW heavyweight champion, to what we're getting now is nearly every second week there's a different champion.
Yeah. And even in terms of wackiness, you could throw a stone backwards in time and hit the Dungeon of Doom. That's how recently that was. It's they've gone through in the decade of the 90s. They have gone through about 3 to 4 different versions of this company, and will go through another distinct period within a couple of months. But yeah, it's I feel sometimes they do these cold opens and they do a recap of Nitro, and it's good because it sets the stakes and let you know exactly what's going on. This felt just a little bit too chaotic for me, where I didn't really... I'm still not straight on what exactly the match was that we were having a look at. He was defending the title in some sort of a way. I think
it's very chaotic. Even just to try and grasp what's going on, the situation with Tori leaving with him, who the heels, who the faces are. It's not the storyline itself is just very confusing. They're not exactly traditional faces and heels in this particular era.
Because we still got Nash with the book. I imagine the entire conversation about somebody probably asked but why would Tori go with you? And he just kind of looks at himself and goes, I'm big sexy. Yeah. And you know what? Like, fair enough.
And we will get to more periods of Nash just loving himself as things go on in this particular episode, and it's just fascinating to see what. Like, I think you made a very good point 2 weeks ago with Aaron when he doesn't give a shit, he's at his best. But when he tries to take an interest and tries to make himself look cool and the top guy, it's just, I don't know, he's trying too hard a little bit.
Yeah. Like, I think we'll talk about the running segment he has on this show, but he's definitely trying to come off as cool on it. And that's not the enjoyable part of these segments. We'll talk about his...
Are we going to dissect that scene by scene as they go, or are we going to have one big recap at the end?
No, we'll drip feed it, because it's not from Nash, but there's somebody else that's like, it's a career-making acting performance by them. But
well, he did get hired by Sam Raimi, so...
This is true. And do you know what? Like, that movie came out, 2002? So, you know, it was probably casting in 99.
That's it.
Sam Raimi might have been on, I'm going to throw on TBS this evening while I'm looking over my screenplay. Like, who's this magnetic presence? I've been looking for a bone saw type. So this goes straight into a break. So that's our whole first segment thrown away on a recap that we didn't really understand. We come back from the break. And again, like WCW timing, Paige and Canyon are already in the ring. And look, sometimes I love the already in ring when it's going to lead like straight to a match with no talking. Like, so the was it Claudio and Phoenix the other week on Dynamite, like where we just opened the show in comparison. Just open the show, ring introductions, bell ring, let's go. Brilliant. Like that gives a sense of urgency to shit like this. When DDP and Canyon are already in the ring and are about to cut a promo, it smacks of, we did not time out this show. Yeah.
Oh, I will not. Not one to no.
We're 2 segments in and we're already running long. That's incredible, especially when the first segment was a pre-tape.
What do you make of DDP's attire pre-match?
Look, considering his age and his old profession of like being a bouncer in what I have to imagine are hilariously tacky nightclubs from any number of 80s gangster flicks, he dresses exactly like a man like that would dress. That's what I'll say. What did you think of it?
Oh, I thought you just finished a marathon. You know, when these guys are running 38 miles, or you know, and they've got someone that's there to throw some tin foil over them. He just looked like this isn't something you'd wear to make yourself look cool and presentable. He's not in this era.
A phrase that I would use to describe Paige quite often during this period is crispy. Because if you look at the man's skin, it looks like he spent, because this is at the height of tanning beds.
That would explain the foil, to be fair.
Yeah, the foil. Yeah,
X with the colour, you know.
He's like a fucking jack of potato, is what he is actually. Now that I think about it,
what a jack potato! He's over.
Because if you look at his skin, like it's got the sunspots and the kind of like dry redness of somebody that like fell asleep in the sunbed and was in it for an hour too long. I don't know if this was a cultural phenomenon outside of Ireland, but Joey, do you remember like in that late 90s, early 2000s period where like a group of mas would get together and rent like a sunbed that would be in one of their houses?
Yes, that was a staple in Pearse Street where I'm from. Like, there was always a couple of, and there'd be mas that weren't exactly on the cusp of beauty to begin with.
Yeah.
They had hard lives in the sense of they'd already be smoking 30 Silk Purple already a day.
Yeah.
They'd be definitely on the beer at least 3 or 4 nights a week, like, you know. And they'd have that weathered look on their face, and they thought, well, you know what, let's get some sun, and you know, that's gonna make things, you know, much better for my skin, which it didn't.
Yeah, you're hanging a poster over a crack in the plaster at that stage, aren't you? But yeah, that's what I think of. Like now I'm thinking jack of potato, but what I have been thinking about Paige lately is just like crispy from a sunbed.
But he makes it work, to be fair to him.
Yeah. And look, still, like, you know, he's quite, like, he's what, in his late 60s now, is he? Mid to late 60s?
Oh, he looks great for his age.
Like, for his age, he still looks great, which, considering the amount of, like, abuse he must have been giving his skin during this period, is quite phenomenal for the guy. That, I tell you, that DDP yoga, it works miracles.
I did like some of his lines as well, to be fair to him. Like, you know, coupon clipping. You had to work in coupon clipping into a hateful promo. I like it.
I've got these, so I've got 2 lines from him I've written down. It's like, you love me, you hate me, but you'll never forget me. Pretty good.
It's good.
And then the one you were alluding to there, he calls them, and I quote, Copenhagen dipping, coupon clipping, draft beer drinking rednecks.
He's great. I just think and he delivers it very flawlessly as well. I think anyone could say that and make it just sound shit, but he just delivers it so well and so like, as you say, crisp.
Yeah,
and no, he's just there's something about this guy that's just likable. You can see even when he's face or heel. I don't know. I always warm to the guy.
Yeah, no, I love him, and I think he's a guy that. I think he got an awful lot of stick in the 2000s and the 2010s when people would be doing shoot interviews and talking about how he liked to lay out his matches move for move. And I'm like, I don't care how you make the sandwich. Once the sandwich is delicious when I'm eating it, I don't care. I mean, I guess within reason.
Well, it depends. Once someone's like at least washing their hands
beforehand,
you know, that doesn't really work in this analogy.
Yeah.
Like, the guy, like, let's be honest, this guy, he started very late in his career compared to other guys, you know, and you've got to commend this guy for having the confidence to start as early, especially when guys were retiring like in 35, 36 in some cases at, you know, in professional wrestling. This guy took a chance, he got himself over, and he's so likable. I just think he's just he's the kind of guy, working class here, that you kind of want to root for.
Yeah, and damn near the top of my list for people that were done dirty by WWE.
Oh,
you know?
Oh God, Jesus Christ! Let's not talk about the stalker angle, please.
Yeah, that day will come. Where
this guy is a natural face. There's no doubt about it. Some people just, like, don't get me wrong, you can still turn people heel in the right, but this circumstances, having him as a stalker for the Undertaker's wife, like, what the?
The more time goes on with me and Lee, and the more people start listening to this show, and we've had already now. Bear in mind, we're only about halfway through the timeline run of the podcast. But there's already people concerned about, are we just going to stop podcasting when Thunder ends? And the more people that are asking that, the more people are listening, the more I'm saying to Lee, is like, we're going to have to do the fucking invasion, aren't we?
Oh, yeah.
Well, like,
it's the natural progression. Like, you have to see where WCW went to die.
God.
And you'll probably have to go to the NWO invasion, too.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Dull times, my friend.
Yeah, so Young Parents Saturn comes out for our first match, which is DDP with Canyon versus Perry Saturn. Paige kind of steamrolls him at the bell, and we are maybe 5 seconds into this match before Tenay and Larry start right into Hummer talk.
Yes.
As somebody...
They also say there's like this. I think Larry says there's folks. There's hundreds, thousands of people. They're wearing stin masks in the area. I can't see one.
Yeah. And the thing is, there have been in the past, but this is not the week to be doing that bit. What do you think? Like, as somebody who's kind of, you know, you've been listening to the podcast, but you weren't, as you said, like a WCW guy necessarily at the time. Coming back to this, like, what has been known infamously as the Hummer angle, like, is it the horse shit you had always worried it would be?
No, it is and it isn't, I suppose. But it's one of those things that's infamous. Obviously, without even watching the show back then, like, you could read this and, you know, think people aren't too happy. Like, I'd read Power Slam magazines, and I think it was Manners, Matt Musings. They would have they had a piece on it one week where how basically horse shit it was. But like, it would have been good if they actually just had any sort of forward planning, you know, to it. Had like the obviously this is something they want to do, but they had no idea where it was going to go. And if they just had somewhere that they wanted to go, it would have, you know, produced something much more, you know, favorable and much more pleasurable. Yeah, it is what it is.
Once they didn't have Carmen Electra in the bag anymore, it was aimless after that. But I think it's one of those things where my big grievance with it, watching it now, because one, like, I'm trying to take myself out of the fact that I know it goes nowhere satisfying ultimately, that it's just a bunch of this, you know, forcing it down your throat, and it's just one of those WCW things that just fizzes out rather than has this incredible conclusion.
But like, that's the thing. It was one of those things that, like, you think, right, it's been built up. They've made it a big deal themselves by mentioning, like, this is a DDP versus Saturn match, and they're talking Hummer. Yeah. Like, if you don't know really where it's going to go, let's not present it to be as big a deal as you should be.
Yeah. Let it cook in the background until you figure it out or something. Yeah.
Or just let it die quietly.
What I was going to say was, like, even taking the fact that we have that ability to know where it's going from 2023, the thing that I'm annoyed about watching it is that the crowds are actively telling them they don't care.
Yeah.
You know, like, and it reminds me, like, and it's quite harsh because in terms of like historical significance, it's not nearly on the level of the Hummer thing. But the few weeks of the Four Pillars stuff in AEW at the start of this pay-per-view cycle, where the crowds were telling them we don't want this, and they just kept doing it. Now they are pivoting a bit, so that like they are listening way more than WCW did. But the first couple of weeks very much felt like that, where the crowd are telling you we don't care, we don't want to see this. And you are just trying to tell them, no, you do. You are interested in this, and they ain't buying it. And that's what this... I've noticed very much that a lot of the Hummer talk has shifted to commentary rather than people on live mics in the arena talking about it, because I think they know the reaction it's going to get if they start talking about it again. Just interesting.
That tells you exactly what... If you know it's going to get shit on by the live audience or ignored... Maybe it's not the best idea to keep going, but like you have to listen to your audience. And I think, especially when you're WCW in this area, like, and even again, they're not the only company guilty to this. Like, is AEW sometimes, WWE 100%, especially in modern era.
WWE like, it's the house style to tell you this is important until you just go, okay, fine.
This is what you like. This is you're gonna like this. You don't like this thing you actually like. No, you like this thing, and. Like the Hummer was like I'm personally never being like, even back then, like I was never a huge fan of these kind of angles. Like even the who knocked over Steve Austin, you know, the whole investigation one. It was always one of the things that we'll kick this can down the road and see where it lands. And then eventually when it lands with Rikishi, like no one gives a shit. Like, you know, no one gave a shit about Rikishi, and like it was never going to be that thing to make him a star. There's other ways to make this guy a star.
People were kind of like, right, okay, if it just turns out it was Triple H, it was Triple H all along that did it. It's like, okay, that's the one that we'll give you that. If it was that makes sense. We'll go with that. But then, like, it was just such a wet fart, the Rikishi stuff, and then I did it for The Rock, and then it was ultimately like they panicked and they're like, but it was orchestrated by Triple H.
There's one thing Rich from Voices Wrestling told me when he first joined. He was always like, predictability isn't a bad thing in wrestling.
No.
It can build things. It's logical. It's pragmatic, and like sometimes trying to be so unpredictable, like WWE have been this year, but trying to you thought Cody was winning. Hold on a second. It's like sometimes the right answer is the predictable and the most logical one. It's not necessary to swerve, you know. And like the Rikishi thing, for example, the swerve for the sake of a swerve.
The best quote-unquote swerves are the ones that as soon as they happen, you're shocked, but then absolutely makes sense as soon as you start thinking about it.
Like, a great example of that would have been the turn of ECW wrestlers in WWE. Do you remember, like, when you had, like, I think it was Kane and Jericho, and you had Bubba Ray come down the ring, you had Taz come down the ring, and I was thinking, oh, here we go, the WWF guys, and that was brilliant.
The infamous Raw, where they hot-shotted about 18 months worth of angles in 2 hours.
I still loved it.
Yeah, oh, look, that
I'm very easily pleased.
The moment in between the turn and the moment Stephanie McMahon comes out is great. Yes. You know, like the Paul screaming, "Feel this moment for the rest of your life." That stuff is great.
Yes. Don't you know McMahon's are the stars though? That's what people come to see. Like, you don't remember WrestleMania 2000? It was the McMahons that did that, not The Rock and Triple H and others. Oh God.
But back to this match. So after the Sting mask stuff, the guys are back in the ring, and Page reverses a whip, but Saturn uses the momentum to drop kick Kanyon off the apron. Saturn follows Kanyon out, but Page surprises them with a plancha. Heat now as Page distracts the ref to let Kanyon get a few licks in. I gotta say, during this whole Jersey Triad period as well, as like I'm kind of bummed when it seems to be mostly Bam Bam as the man on the outside when the three of them are out there. Because I love Bauer and I want to see him wrestle, but also because even though he's a great wrestler, the one who is the 10 out of 10 goof at ringside that is like has the characteristics best suited to a heel manager is Kanyon.
Yes,
by a mile. He is like just an unbelievable talent. At just being a cartoon character.
To be the top guy. This guy was always a great undercard talent. He was so underrated. He had these mannerisms, this presence about him that just you could easily believe he would be this kind of, you know, goofy, aloof kind of character in here. Where, like you say, Bam Bam, he that wasn't his stick. That wasn't his bag. That's not his strengths.
He should just be killing dudes. if there's one dumb angle from the final run of WCW I can't wait for, it's positively Canyon. I want to see some Canyon cutters. I'm so excited for when that happens. Because you talk about, like, again, a guy in the wrestling's long proud tradition of, like, they gave him shit and he turned it into gold.
Even in the Invasion, if you eventually make it that far, you'll have, like, he was the MVP of the Alliance. And this was shit. He probably came up with this on the fly himself just to give himself something to do. And before you know it, he's getting reactions. He's getting over. Like, and then he gets creamed by Steel Chair.
So sidewalk slam from Page as Larry then opines on commentary that Flair and Piper have lost it. Good to see he's finally up to date with the program. He says they're going to stack the deck against the babyface at the pay-per-view. More on that later. Through a break where we were apparently treated to not the last reference on this show to Megadeth. As during the ads, a new Megadeth track from Universal Soldier played. We're going to be reviewing that movie when it comes out.
Have you seen the movie?
I have only seen the clip that they showed on Nitro for about 4 months of Goldberg spearing into an empty elevator.
I watched it at the time. I watched it way back when, and I was like, I loved the first movie with Dolph Lundgren and Jean-Claude, and I just thought this is an epic film. I was like, yeah, now they have a sequel to it, brilliant. And I didn't really grasp the concepts as a 14-year-old of what a direct to DVD film was, and God, that was wasn't really a patch on the original.
No. Yes, I eagerly await sitting down for my first screening of that. Standing sidekick gives Saturn an opening. Roll up for 2. Page with a sit-out powerbomb for 2. Cutter attempt, but Saturn shoves him into the ref. Canyon in, and he wraps the title belt around the buckle, which, again, that Canyon, like, just doing things slightly differently than you usually see. Seeing him wrapping it around the top turnbuckle. Saturn goes for the 10 punch, but Canyon obviously has rigged the turnbuckle, so he just picks him up and drops him face first on the belt.
I love that bit. That was a great spot.
It was really clever, really inventive way.
I can't remember ever seeing that particular spot in anything off the top of my head. So I thought, listen, once it's unique, it works.
Every other time, it's the guy will take the padding off the turnbuckle and he'll do the drop onto his face on the exposed turnbuckle. That's just how that's done. So, like, yeah, I absolutely appreciate him doing that. So once he's pancaked, Canyon drags him under Page. Kick out. Canyon is livid. Starts arguing with the referee. While this is happening, Benoit materializes in the ring out of fucking nowhere. Hits the diving headbutt on Page and Saturn wins. Upon the bell, big suicide dive by Benoit, but Bigelow comes out in his tearaway stripper pants.
Oh man, I had a pair of those when I don't know if you were part of the 96 to 99 tearaway crowd, but I was all in with the Adidas tearaways, man. Don't knock them.
I had them. As the segment ends, Tenay is teasing the debut of the No Limit Soldiers later tonight, and two world title bouts. What did you think of this one?
I enjoyed it for what it was. Like, it was probably, for a Thunder match, it was fine. I kind of would have liked it go a bit longer. I'm a big Perry Farrell fan. Like, when he is given a chance to display his talents, this guy is entertaining. Canyon made this thoroughly as an interference guy, made this really well, and then even Benoit, he doesn't do much wrong until obviously the unpleasantness to 2008. But in the ring, this guy is phenomenal. He hits everything for me. He's just so crispy, so clean. It's why there's nothing necessarily wrong with this except for the fact that it's kind of short.
Yeah. All participants in the match highly skilled. There's definitely, as you said, because it's so short, there's definitely more in the tank. We've seen these guys have longer matches and better matches. But absolutely satisfactory morsel of what they're capable of doing for an opener on a TV show. Our next match was not that.
No.
This was the No Limit Soldiers, the team of B.A., Brad Armstrong, and Swole, with Conan and Rey Mysterio Jr., versus, and I think this is maybe why Lee wasn't around this week, the returning Disorderly Conduct. Mean Mike, Tough Tom, Salty Sally, the gang's all here.
Oh, God.
My first note for this match, Joey, said, fuck me, these lads are back.
Oh, I love these guys. They're so bad, they're good. I just love that these guys, obviously, to try and separate themselves from the crowd in WCW, have the worst attire and haircuts known to man. Like, even their names, they don't make any effort with them. It's like, me and Mike, Tough Tom, it was like, come on, this is like...
The saddest part...
They looked at the Midnight Express and probably the new Midnight Express and seeing Bombastic Bart and Bodacious Bart and think, how can we copy this and make it worse?
The saddest part is they probably took longer than they'd be willing to admit to come up with those names.
They don't look like the smartest guys.
Yeah. I also want to make it headcanon that long-time Irish wrestling stalwart Duncan Disorderly took his name as a tribute to his favourite tag team, Disorderly Conduct, and you'll not convince me otherwise.
Well, at least he didn't take the attire homage, thank God, because I don't know what they're trying to.
Well, you couldn't wear that gear because you'd cover up his shitty prison tats.
But I do think, again, shitty prison tats, they're so bad they're good.
Yeah, that is very true. Like, it's the one industry in which that kind of works as a positive. Today, once again, mentions Megadeth, so it's so
they're over.
Funny.
They're stars of the show, man.
It is so funny that the two things where it's like, you're going to need to want to tune into Nitro this week. Hey, Megadeth are playing, and they're playing the new song from Universal Soldier, and then almost as a postscript, like, oh yeah, Bret Hart's back.
Oh yeah,
I was like, sorry,
back for months. Like, it's only Bret Hart. It's like,
yeah.
Like, how far has he fallen since 1997?
Because this is his big, I believe, like, because, again, this is, like, maybe his third return in the year he's been there. And I think this is the one where it's his return from his fake quitting. Which should be a bigger deal.
Like, everything about Bret Hart at this particular time, like, it should have been a bigger deal.
You were gift wrapped.
How can you not know how to use this guy?
You were gift wrapped the WWF champion, and you fucked it from day one. You fucked it. Like, I'm having that guy win the WCW title on his first Nitro.
You make him. He's a ready-made star. Ready-made star.
They would never deliberately build to a pay-per-view. It's pay-per-views build to Nitro in this company, so I'm not going to like do my booking thing, which would be build him up for the first pay-per-view. I'm going to do what WCW should have done, knowing their booking tropes, and just have him win the belt unannounced on Nitro. Because, like, even though, like, I'm against them doing unannounced shit on Nitros, you want to talk about being the biggest news story in wrestling for weeks. It's like the WWF champion just went across and became the champion of the other company.
But he's lost so much steam at this stage. Like, this is 1999. Like,
I was going to say you couldn't do it now, but they are about to do it. They are going to put the world title on him in relatively short order. So look forward to that, everybody.
Oh man, he's just like, this at the time would have been the equivalent of CM Punk coming to AEW initially. Like, this guy had this kind of. I don't know if any of the listeners really remember how hot Bret Hart was at this particular time. He was just.
Bret was a household name.
Everyone knew who Bret Hart was. I don't know. WWF obviously made him look like such a star, even in 96, and when he went off after like WrestleMania. Like, the fact that he was still on television every weekend showing a Lonesome Dove, like, this guy's the guy. He's always going to be the guy, and he was like, he had so much fuel coming from the end of Montreal. There's one thing that like they could have capitalized on was this, and they could have propelled them to so much greatness. Yet nothing.
And for them as well, like, handling him well would have opened up Canada to them as a market that they didn't really... Like, I feel like after the... We've been talking a lot since All In tickets went on sale about how WCW never really utilised their popularity in Europe. Because when they did come over here, they sold like gangbusters, but they never booked big enough buildings, long enough tours, or big enough shows. And they were still doing huge numbers. But the same is true of Canada, where, like, during this whole run so far, they've had, like, God, we covered the one Toronto Nitro they did, and that's about it. Like, none of these pay-per-views are going up north of the border. They wouldn't really, funnily enough, like, the Canadian wrestler that they would push huge over the next year is probably Lance Storm. Yeah. And, like, Canada being part of his gimmick as well. Whereas, like, you have, like, honest-to-God Canadian royalty in Bret Hart coming in.
He was loved. You don't underestimate. Like, he was like Jack Charlton in the Irish equivalent. Like, he could do no wrong. Everything he did was correct. Everything that he said was wrong, was going to be wrong. This guy, he could walk on water in Canada. And you have this guy. He's just book Calgary, book Edmonton, book anywhere north of the border, and he will either come close to selling that building out.
And he's not like, so like another guy that came over for, after the same fallout. So Bulldog comes over. Bulldog is washed.
He's done.
He is absolutely done, which is funny because he'd have a WCW run and then another WWF run, even though I'm already saying he's washed. But that's
can you even call that a WWF run?
Yeah.
God, man, he had about 2 or 3 matches that I can really remember. I don't know what else he did.
Where's my title shot? Yeah. But like Bret, like you said, like Bret was full of piss and vinegar, and he was still physically capable for like until the end of '99, obviously.
And you had ready-made stories. You could have him against so many big guys. Whether it's straight away, you could have him with Scott Hall and Nash straight away because they are connected to his mortal enemy from WWF. It's a no-brainer. Even just to set things off, you'd have big match with Hogan, who this guy obviously he had a lot of bad blood from 1993.
If you could get both of them to agree to do business, you could. But like that's
true.
Famously a difficult match to get going.
Hogan not doing business, I won't hear of it.
Yeah, that's not going. I feel like inserting the Hikaru Shida, that's not going to work for me, brother. Here at this stage, tremendous moment that was. So I guess we got to talk about this match now. Where I think the foreboding sign that the 2 best wrestlers in this segment are both managing.
These guys are like, if you watch this show, like obviously you can tell by the entrance who's coming down the ring, but you get Rey Mysterio, we get Conan delivering, getting these crowd hyped up, and then they just fuck off and you've got Brad Armstrong and Swole here, like it's such a downgrade.
And it's such a Brad Armstrong's tenure on our podcast has been characterized by there's nothing physically wrong with this guy in the ring.
He's good. He's a good hand, but he's completely miscast here.
Yeah. I did laugh at so Conan does a shtick on the mic, but this is like the gimmick Rey Mysterio has in promos now is to do shout outs. And it's usually to various record labels, but on this show, and this is where Garrett Kidney's beeper goes off, he shouts out his boy Dominic.
Oh, I heard that. 2 years old he would have been at the time too.
Tell you, long-term storytelling. The Hootie Hoo is over in Lafayette. I'll give them that. So the match just starts off with disorderly conduct, feeding and bumping for Swole, and they clearly, within 3 seconds of this match starting, they don't trust Swole to do anything. And I'm not saying that's wrong.
If you could compare Swole to anyone modern day, who would you compare him to? Like, I look at him and think he's like a more athletic, smaller version of Omos.
I was going to say Omos. I was going to say, short Omos or short 1 in a billion Satnam Singh.
But he can move. You can see him. He has athleticism in there. He just doesn't know how to work. He's just...
He's giraffe on roller skates. Do you know what I mean? Like, he can move, but he's so up in his head about, what you're supposed to do in wrestling that he's just he's got nothing, and they don't trust him to do anything. He's just doing basic wrist locks and clotheslines, and this is the hardest Tenay and Larry work all night, is trying to put over this guy's athletic credentials, like his college football days and stuff like that. And then as soon as actual wrestling has to start happening, BA comes in to do it. Tough Tom takes an awkward looking bump to the floor. I can't remember what expression he must have pulled, but I wrote, Brad Armstrong looks like a 50-year-old men's rights activist.
It's a fair comparison.
Is it the camo and the flat cap, I think, is what really does it. So
I would look at him. He definitely wouldn't look at a place like a capital riot at all, would he?
No. God bless him. Which is funny considering, who his brother is. We'll say no more.
We will have to say more about his brother, unfortunately, as the show goes on.
He will make us say more. So Brad Armstrong stuff, again, it's like we said, his stuff looks good, but it's a shame he has the charisma of a wet brick.
He tries. I don't mind a guy when he tries, but like the old Paul Heyman adage is hide the weaknesses, accentuate the positives. And this guy is completely not in this particular role. This isn't going to do him any favors. This is and to be fair, he's never going to do much. To be fair, in this roster compared to the other stars and other potential that's there.
He's in that category with a Mike Enos or people like that, where like physically speaking,
Brock Anderson.
There's nothing mechanically wrong with this guy necessarily. He's not spectacular, but he's not awful. But there's just not enough to do anything interesting with.
Yeah, he's just a face, isn't he? He's just there.
He's just a dude.
He doesn't suck, but he doesn't inspire.
No. Top rope clothesline attempt by disorderly conduct backfires, and we get a hot tag. Swole just doing basic punches and scoop slams. I did howl at him attempting a pin off a scoop slam. One jobber goes flying over the ropes, the other one into the corner, runs into a Swole palm strike, and the No Limit Soldiers win. I did not expect that to be his finishing move.
It's not just the palm strike; it's how he executes it. He tries to be Jackie Chan-esque and give it some sort of karate-like grace, and it's just like, this doesn't suit you at all.
But he kind of just catches him in the throat rather than the face as well, which is funny to me. Larry, I don't know what this guy was smoking tonight. This refers to the palm strike as a Greco-Roman move that's hard to block. There you go. So that was, you would have seen that in the first Olympiad.
It looked like it was hard to block, to be fair.
Yeah. Tried to block it with his throat to no success. Our next singles match, Eddie Guerrero versus La Parka. The big man has a new jacket for this one. It's a contrast of styles in terms of like their personalities at this time, because you have La Parka coming out, air guitar in the chairs, doing his little dances. He's happy to be here. He's got a leather jacket, and then Eddie comes out with that Hall of Fame scowl.
He's so intense. I fucking love how intense he is. We talked earlier about the Montreal match between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, for example. I know we just mentioned it briefly, but these two worked before the unpleasantness. They worked like they hated each other, but they kept it professional, to that point. And that's what Eddie Guerrero brings. He makes it look like he hates this person he's in the ring. He's so intense. He's so brooding, and man, you believe this guy actually despises his opponent.
What do you think about this this kind of like mini story arc that Eddie's going on as like the LWO hunter? Because like, I like the idea of the story, because he's a vindictive heel, but he's also right. They did turn his back on him. But I feel like they're not making it like, so he's telling a great story and they're putting him against the right people to tell that story. But I don't feel like WCW is making this as big a deal as it should be. Like, this guy is one by one taking out these fuckers.
I think that sometimes the best heels can be the ones who are genuinely wronged. Like, if you remember, again, touch on Bret Hart again, let's go back there. Like, when he lost to Shawn Michaels in WrestleMania 12, like, he felt he was hard done by. He already had 16 minutes in there. He had him dead to rights in the sharpshooter till the time now. And then he was screwed over in his own head, even though it was probably fair and square the way Gorilla Monsoon, got him back into the ring. And he had a genuine gripe. He genuine axe to grind. And Eddie Guerrero's in a similar position here. He has that particular. He's right. He's justified, and he is allowed to be a bit of a prick, because why should he suffer anymore? And that's what makes this character so interesting.
So he starts the match by like aggressively beating on La Parka. Parker does one of my favorite things he does, which is it's almost like he's trying to do the poetry in motion into the corner, but like he just eats turnbuckle and goes arse over tea kettle. And then he is, speaking of turnbuckle, he eats a nasty amount of turnbuckle off a drop toe hold. Like, he does not put up his hands at all. Eddie grabs him by the mask, which is like his new thing that he started doing against Psychosis, where he grabs a guy by the mask and drags him. Except this time he fucking grabs La Parka by the mask and does like lawn bowling and just hoofs him out of the ring onto the floor. Follows with a big dive. Parka whipped into the railings. He does kind of like a wobble that almost looked like his dance, and then I completely cracked up at Eddie just doing the mocking La Parka dance in front of him.
So good.
He then shouts that Parka's a disgrace, which I loved. Just reminded me of like the heyday of Bill and the boys on RT Soccer Commentary. God, he's a disgrace.
God, I miss those days. Damien Duff and I can't remember who else is on the panel these days, but the days of Bill and Eamon just have at loggerheads was great. God, I miss Eamon Dunphy, and that sounds so weird because he's terrible.
Yeah, so like, how do we describe it, Joey? Like, because it's like, so most sports commentary is like somewhere between bad and inoffensive. Like, inoffensive is about as good as it gets on most sports commentary I watch. Like, whether it's on soccer or whether it's NFL. That's kind of the analysis you're getting is either very middle of the road, not going to offend anybody, or it's just bad because people are trying to like out hot take each other. There was a concert like a 20 plus year period on Irish TV where the soccer pundits were 4 old men who did not give a shit, and if something was bad, they would tell you at length how bad it was, and it was compelling television.
That's it. You had honesty. You had these. It was basically watching 4 guys in a pub just have an argument about alcohol. Well, maybe Eamon had a bit of alcohol, maybe a little bit more, but these guys were this. They especially with Eamon, he was so contrarian. If the other 3 guys would say it's black, this guy was firmly believe it's white, and like they were so honest sometimes and brutal, and they were unforgiving in their arguments with each other, and it was compelling television rather than the actual match itself.
I'll never forget Eamon Dunphy's absolute burial of John Hartson, who I think was at Norwich at the time. I don't think he was at Celtic, where I can't remember how much money it was he cost, but basically he had a shit one, and Eamon Dunphy used the telestrator to draw a circle around the bottom half of John Hartson's body and to say out loud in the studio, live television, that isn't the arse of a £7 million player, or however much it was.
Oh man, I miss Eamon. I do. I remember his meltdown with Rod Little. That's the pinnacle.
So Rod Little was a journalist.
Was he? Well, Eamon painted him as someone else.
Allegedly. So Rod Little was this journalist, and there was an incident at a World Cup in 2002 for people who aren't soccer fans, where Roy Keane, our captain, and arguably, I would say inarguably, the greatest player to ever pull on an Ireland shirt, and we will not legislate it because it is been quite some amount of years, but he went home from the World Cup. He took his ball, he went home, and this nearly caused a fucking civil war in Ireland. It was, oh my god, it was so tense, but there was an extended near mental breakdown by Eamon Dunphy on live television, who was a good friend of Keane's and the ghostwriter of his autobiography that was about to come out.
If I could correct you, Dave, I think the meltdown actually happened when he left Man United, wasn't it?
Oh, was it?
I think so.
Oh, no, yes. Sorry, when he left the World Cup, that was the one where
he's had a few meltdowns, to be fair.
He called Niall Quinn a creep during that one.
Yes.
But yeah, it was when he left because he did the MUTV interview where
he's a bully and he stood up to bullies.
Yeah, he's a bully and he stood up to bullies. And then Bill O'Hurley, the kind of the lovely granddad host of the show, would be like, he's always devil's advocate, and he goes, now, but Eamon, Rod Little said, and he said, Rod
he loses
Little,
it.
I'll tell you who Rod Little is. He ran away and left his wife for a young one.
It's so great.
And then you just hear Bill go, Eamon.
Man.
And then it became it was parlayed into a very successful T-shirt that I bought from Twitter bad boy Pray for Patrick, which is the famous Sonic Youth album cover, except it says Rod Little, he ran away and left his wife for a young one.
At the time I didn't even know who Rod Little was, and now I'll never forget him.
Yeah, especially now the more I learn about Rod Little being like a horrendously creepy, awful man, I'm just like, hell yeah, Eamon, well done.
He tells it like it is, poor Eamon.
Yeah.
And the thing is, he did all that. The whole speech, he had to be under the influence of something.
Oh, 100%.
Oh man!
And
the thing is about Eamon, he was Roy Keane's ghostwriter, wasn't he? Yeah.
Oh, there was a great moment as well where Graham Souness, former player and manager, said to him, was like, Eamon, who did you ever manage during a disagreement? And Eamon says, I managed to stay alive for 63 and a half years.
Yes. Oh, I used to love Eamon Dunphy though. Sometimes he was such a lick arse though to the rest of them. He'd be like, like you look around like the great players like Pele, Maradona, Giles, Souness, and they just happen to be sitting beside him. Yeah. Well done, Eamon, well done.
Was that during his Ronaldo's a cod?
He's a con man. He's a cod. He was. I think he said he was past it. I think in 2010. I think he wasn't past it there at all. Now,
look,
no.
if you want to treat yourself and you've never heard of the man, like, go to YouTube and look up like a best of Eamon Dunphy.
He's a national treasure.
Yeah,
for the wrong reasons.
There's a particular one where he does an entire character assassination of a man who was going for the Ireland manager's job named Terry Venables. That is a multi-part video during which Eamon produces a dossier of information on how crooked the man was.
He was brilliant. And the thing is, he was a loose cannon. You never knew what he was going to say, which way. He was so unpredictable. You never knew.
Promo.
Oh yeah, he could cut a promo. And the thing is, he never really played at top level either. He played for like Millwall, I think, was the highest league he got to. You know, it's just he's a fascinating man.
Yeah. So
back to wrestling.
Yeah, back to wrestling, I guess. Yeah, we get a commercial, and it's like this fever dream Nitro commercial that tells you not to miss a minute. Back in the ring, and I'm noticing it for the first time in this show, there is a lot of empty chairs, which does not bode well for our next. I believe our next Thunder is a pre-tape that happens after this broadcast, so I'm not looking forward to that one. But I will say, I'm kind of noticing with the way we've gone match, that the lack of faff on this show has been quite refreshing.
It is. Now, it's a pity the content isn't necessarily better. Like, to be fair, like, this match itself is just, it's perfectly fine.
Yeah. And that's kind of like you're on the road between fair and middling for a lot of this show. Now, I have made that reflection. I do know, like, the second hour of this show does have a lot more shite.
Oh, well, it doesn't really have promos per se, but it has a nice B-movie.
Good Lord, it has segments. So Laparca misses, Laparca nails Eddie with an enziguri. Nice long stretch of Parker wearing down Eddie, giving him more than I would have necessarily expected in this match. Camel clutch variation where he's just clawing at his face, which is cool. Tenay wonders if this is to invoke Gory Guerrero to enrage Eddie, as the camel clutch was one of the moves Gory was known for using. Laparca pulls his hair, German suplex, then goes up top for a corkscrew moonsault, eats absolute shit. Eddie, the speed at which Eddie got up off the mat and hits, like, I could only describe the tackle he does. Like, it's not a pounce, it's kind of like a mid-ring version of, like, Darby Allin's pinball tope suicida.
That's a very good comparison. Yeah, it's good.
Like, where he just bounces off the man, and like the speed was frightening for a man as wide as Eddie. And then, you know, Park is down, frog splash, win. Nice little match, but I thought it finished strong.
It did, and with Eddie, I think the problem with watching Eddie in hindsight is that you know how high the bar is for him as he gets on in his career. You know what he can do. This guy is capable of so much more. This is decent. It's nothing bad. Dare I say, probably match of the night, which is a low bar to be fair, but it's perfectly fine. There's perfectly acceptable wrestling. It's nothing too adventurous or too exciting, but it's enjoyable at the very least.
Yeah. Next up, it's Masterpiece Theatre time.
Yes. What I came here for.
We have talked around this, but this is the first segment of Macho Man.
Oh, it's pure bollocks.
And Kevin Nash. It is some of the most fabulously bad pre-tapes I've seen. The thing that I kept thinking, Joey, when we watched these throughout the rest of this show is, this was the take they went with.
Yes. Macho Man is an absolute star, like, in so many ways inside the ring. He is a great promo guy. He is a fantastic improved promoter. He is not a good actor.
No.
No.
Neither is Nash trying to be cool. So it's like the perfect it's the perfect blend of, like, Nash is just bad, but Match is like going for it. So he's like so far into bad. I loved it.
So just to be clear, just so the viewers know and the listeners know, who's the face and who's the heel here?
So in theory, the baby face is Kevin Nash,
who has kidnapped the valet of Macho Man.
Yes,
so
that's correct.
The face is a kidnapper. That's a good start. Good platform.
Yes.
Okay, we've established that. And just to be clear, then he's then contacting the Macho Man with ransom demands nearly.
A kidnapper who, for a lot of these segments, is strongly implying that he has Gorgeous George in some form of servitude or perhaps sex trafficking.
Oh, well, this is 99. He's a pure face. It was a different time. Men could be men.
Yes.
Men could be Harvey Weinstein.
So, Macho is pacing in his hotel room in far too small of a t-shirt. It's also very weird just to see Randy Savage in a normal t-shirt. That was kind of disconcerting.
He was slowly transitioning into, like, you know, just plain man Randy Savage at this stage.
It was where I learned that Randy Savage has magical powers, because Randy Savage was able to make his phone ring by shouting at it. So he picks it up, and without knowing, because no caller ID, no display on the phone, it's just a very simple old hotel phone with physical buttons on it, as was the style at the time. He picks up the phone and immediately answers it. Instead of hello or who is this, says, "Sexy, this you?" And
he's expecting his call.
Any other human being on Earth on the other end of that phone would be incredibly disconcerted by that as a way to start a phone call.
Just to be clear, right? So she was kidnapped on Monday.
Yes.
And this call takes place on Thursday.
Yes. So
he's been pacing perhaps for 3 days.
Yeah. Now, I would love if the camera were to pan down and there was like a hole worn through the carpet. Or there's like loads of like TV dinners strewn about the room because he's like, I can't leave. Just in case. The thing about him waiting for the call is at no point, at least in the recap version we saw, was it made clear there would be any form of communication or negotiation taking place.
He's just waiting for a call that may never come.
I didn't realize until maybe 3 of these segments deep that they had Nash's belt. Did not know that.
Did not know this either.
Yeah,
that's
did not
completely
know that.
new.
Yeah. This was not brought up until they have the hostage exchange later. And yes, we will be getting to that. So, just a phenomenal way to answer the phone. Nash is shirtless in bed, getting a massage from a blonde woman in a robe.
Oh, he's great.
You can see above the waist.
He is definitely selling a sex line, right?
Yeah, no, 100%.
Like you could just mute him there and have some guy talking over him. Hey, do you like guys in your area?
Hot singles in your area. He tells Macho there's a phone booth that he has 15 minutes to get to it. It's like 6 blocks away.
Oh, he has 30. Then he changes it to 15.
Yes, true.
True face fashion.
In a line that fucking kills me, but it becomes weirdly a bit of the continuity of this angle. Randy says, "I'll be there, but I don't know where I'm going."
Kind of like the storyline, really.
Yeah. This is the whole story. The whole thing tonight is that Randy Savage, he manages to get there, but he is utterly perplexed by fairly simple instructions from Kevin Nash.
Oh, it's brilliant. He's absolutely playing a blinder here.
Yeah. So Nash says, if I don't see you, the deal's off. At which point I'm like, what deal? No one mentioned a deal.
It's just, and again, he's supposed to be like the face. He's bartering for like a world title for, like, a human. You know, it's not exactly top face stuff. Like, and the whole time I was also looking at Nash and thinking he's like Mr. Burns in his bed, you know, with his little phone, you know, when he's waiting for Homer to call,
wrapping his finger around the cord.
Yeah, he's adorable.
He's calling the Corey hotline, is what he's doing.
Words that rhyme with Nash. Cash.
I love
trash.
The end. This was trash. I love the end of this segment where, like, after he hangs up the phone, Nash does a deep sigh, grabs his glass of wine, and moans, "I don't know if I could take another day of this."
Again, was this like the cameras have already stopped rolling at this stage and he didn't realize he was still on?
We then get most of the Rap is Crap music video, which
I fucking love this.
Being recorded. This was fabulous.
This is fucking brilliant.
I wept at the live performance a couple of weeks ago. I love this. This is like, at first I was just like, I knew I had never experienced. Like, again, I think I'm watching on and off during this period as a kid, but I don't remember Rap is Crap.
Like, I'm reading this from Power Slam magazines, and I'm thinking to myself, this sounds awful. I can't. What are they doing with Kurt Hennig? Like, I'm thinking, I'm gonna pray for Kurt Hennig. What are they doing to him?
At the start, it seemed really bad. But it made a turn into like goof territory a few weeks ago, where I'm like, I'm fully on board.
It's great. Like I first of all, I love in the video you have Kurt and it's frilly marigolds.
Yeah.
That's just like, what was the choice there? Like, you know, like is he gonna clean a toilet but wants to look stylish at the same time?
And they're doing this hilariously pandering crap that, like, it's so funny that, like, the urban legend goes that this got play on country music stations.
Did it actually, though? Like,
that's
the thing
no one seems to be able to verify this, but there's definitely, like, people in various cities in the south that they're at when this angle is going on that are super into the song and seem to have absolutely no awareness that they are being massively dunked on.
Because you know there's going to be those couple of hicks that are going to be like, that actually hate rap music and thinking, this is the song for me.
I think that's the genius of it, is that they're getting really into it, but they're not even stopping for a second to think the people who are doing this are the biggest idiots on the roster. And like, this is like Kurt Hennig is a guy who has been like, one, like physically he's washed, and two, he's been like, since Rick Rude died, he's been, understandably for a guy who lost one of, if not his best friend at the time, treading water, like doing nothing. And this has just given him like, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's like he fucking loves this, or at least he's really good at selling like he's really enjoying this, even if he actually wasn't. It's like, holy shit, does this guy that look like he's having the time of his life.
He's taking shit and making it into something. Like, I think you mentioned there with Canyon and his Positively Canyon. This is on the same vein. This is, he's taking something where let's be honest, in the whole NWO, Kurt never fit. He was just another guy, a faceless guy that didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Here, he's entertaining at the very least.
Speaking of the Rednecks, 8-man tag team match. Damien El Dandy, Silver King, Viano 5 versus the West Texas Rednecks. Barry Windham, Bobby Duncombe Jr., Big Bob Cum, Kurt Hennig, and Kendall Windham. I described the former tag team as the Beefy Luchador Justice League. I am always delighted to see Silver King on my screen, but I would have appreciated him in a singles match rather than stuck with the likes of Damien. But here we are.
I love the fact that the Mexican team didn't have a stereotypical team music, which is, again, for the time, is very unheard of.
Yes. And like, if Russo was already here, would not have been the case.
We need lawnmowers first of all. We're gonna need definitely some sort of Spanish guitar, and that's it. Like, and it's just refreshing because like it doesn't happen at this era at all. Especially if you're WWF. Vince, straight away, you're from Mexico. You get Mexican music, and you'll fucking like it.
Can we talk about the Barry Windham fit? Because
his never nude shorts.
The coal miner's gloves, bright yellow. The black vest, the never nude jorts, and enormous knee pads.
He's great.
It's a fucking mental look for a human being to have.
For someone who had at one stage in his career had so much like going for him, to be reduced to this is like, and he seems really happy to be there.
I have a comparison for this collection of human beings to give you at the end of this match, and we'll see if you agree with me. But we'll get there when we get there. This match, I wasn't gone on this. I think it was just guys doing moves and filling time. Dandy versus Kendall was particularly awkward.
Shite is the word I'd go with. Shite. Kendall is terrible. He doesn't even look good. His whole look just hurts my eyes.
Shit. Yeah.
Like he's like, you know, he's some guys, like, fair enough, you're not blessed with good looks. Like, he just doesn't give a shit about his appearance.
No,
God bless him.
He's not even trying.
Barry's haircut is just like, it's, I don't know what to call it. Like, I remember when he was the stalker in 1996, and I was like, I'm trying to compare what he looked like, but I don't remember exactly what the actor's name was or really the show too well. But I remember there was a show, Coach, with Greg T. Nelson, and he had like a sidekick that looked very similar, and I was thinking, that's what he looks like. He looks like a comedy goof. It's just, Barry, you were so good in 1990. What happened?
Yeah, it's an entirely different human being. Hennig, when he's in, is definitely the best of the Cowboys. That's not really saying much.
It's a low bar.
Dandy throws a few slaps at him, and Hennig. One of the great things about Hennig, even when he's washed, is that he's maybe top of the list in WCW when it comes to selling being punch drunk, like just staggering around.
He's always a good seller, to be fair.
The Lucha lads gang up on Hennig, and the other fucking Egypts just stand there watching it happen until Big Bob Cum realizes he needs to do something or may have already missed his cue. So he gets in to interrupt. The crowd don't give a shit about this at all. The match breaks down, and pretty much immediately, it's funny because usually when a match breaks down, you get a couple of minutes of brawling and then you get the finish. Pretty much as it's breaking down, Kendall hits a running bulldog out of the corner and they just fucking win. It
was kept short, which is a positive, right?
That's true. Didn't outstay its welcome, and at about 3.4, Kendall gets back up and drops an extra leg on the man after the bell. Yeah, why not? The dorks sing along again. And this is where a relatively modern day WWE comparison hit me for the West Texas Rednecks at this particular period of time, now that they've taken on a few more members. This crew has huge League of Nations energy.
Oh man, Jesus. League of Nations, there's something I forgot all about. We have Rusev, we had Wade Barrett. Oh.
Yeah, Big Bertie banter.
Jesus.
Yeah, and Shambo.
It's a long time ago.
Now, I believe I've confessed to this before. I'm a huge League of Nations fan.
For your troubles, for your sins. We all like shit. Don't worry.
They were the right kind of bad stable, because they provided me with two of the biggest laughs I ever had in modern WWE. Firstly was during the Rumble, where they took out Roman and Miro did the big "come here, boss" and hugged Vince. Great stuff. Actually, three laughs. The one that I really wished was a recurring bit, when they had their backstage meeting in their little hall of flags. That was great. Around a tiny little table. Fabulous. And then at the one WrestleMania I attended, was where they had the match with the New Day, and they beat them. And Wade Barrett cut the most fabulous one-sentence promo of all time, where he screamed down the microphone, "That's right, the lads have won."
Oh, the lads.
Yeah, when they were calling themselves the lads, it was great. I don't think they were good, but they were great. They were tremendously entertaining.
A great audacious energy, it's brilliant.
Yeah. They, you transplant them into this period of WCW, they're the biggest act on the show.
I really think it's a big insult to the League of Nations, though.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, for sure.
There's no one here that's gonna ever really improve. You look at the likes of Sheamus; he's gone on to better things. Wade Barrett had potential. These guys at this stage of their career either washed or never was.
Wade Barrett, if it wasn't for his body letting him down, probably would have achieved quite a bit more. Sheamus is great. Miro, obviously fabulous. We both love him. And the other guy, whatever. Savage. Let's go back to amateur dramatics. Savage is in the alley.
Oh God, this is brilliant. This is you take the lead in this here, but it's just how does this guy not know his own ringtone?
This is what my very first note was. Just you talk about making your big main event heel look like a fucking idiot. His cell phone goes off and he has genuinely no idea.
He's answering the phone like an absolute
lunatic. He picks up the payphone, and it's the most cell phone ringtone of all time.
It was just short of being a Nokia 3310,
Yeah, and he picks up the payphone. He picks up both payphones, one then the other.
It's in your pocket.
They are strongly implying still, because he's talking Nash on the phone, that Gorgeous George is the masseur in question in the robe. Nash says the deal is just the two of them, 4 blocks back the way he came. Once again, just saying 4 blocks back in the other direction absolutely confuses Savage beyond belief.
Oh, he's threatening Nash like a low rent Moses, he's just giving the absolute socks, and Nash is just
and swearing. He's being bleeped out and everything.
He's definitely trying to do the lotto. He wants to do the lotto. He keeps mentioning he's going to a quick pick.
This is where we piece together the bit about the belt being held hostage as well, because the deal is the girl for the strap, I think is how it's worded. Next up, we have, again, you want to talk about matches that could have been a lot more, given a lot more time. WCW World Cruiserweight title match. Rey Mysterio Jr. with B.A. Conan and Swole versus Blitzkrieg. A Lee Malone special, I think.
Oh, I like Blitzkrieg from the day, but he's one of those guys I think I look back with rose-tinted glasses. Like, I remember, like, the odd time I would have caught one of his matches, and I think, this guy's great. This guy's fantastic. He looks like just something so different. He's fast, and I look at him here and thinking, oh, he's okay.
Is it, like, again, we said it the first time he showed up, is like, you don't even have to tell somebody that this guy was heavily influential on Jack Evans. Do you know what I mean? Like,
he's got a great name. I love his name. He's one of the best theme musics on the show. You know, he's getting me pumped, but he just it doesn't match up with what he is. You know, the whole thing just doesn't match.
Lee is going to be so upset with you, Joey.
I know, but listen, you gotta be honest and say true to myself. Like I look at Blitzkrieg here, and he does the odd bit of move here and there, stops, does another move, stops, and he never gets into any real rhythm. And we know what Ray's capable of. You know, we know when he's firing on all cylinders. You know, to be fair, like, you know, Ray is like, I wouldn't say he phones it in, but he goes through the motions a bit.
Yeah. So today once again mentions tune in on Monday for Brett and Megadeth. But before this match starts, something you alluded to earlier.
Oh yes,
Joey. BA gets on the mic.
Oh God, what was he doing? It's like,
it's
your brother does this in a different company. How about you do it here?
And then horrified
trails off.
It made me think about that man and that act, which I hated at the time. I still hate now. But yes, BA gets on the mic and does the "oh, you didn't know."
Oh yes, we did.
Yeah, which is funny because, like, I would guarantee that at the time, 95% of WCW fans had no idea this man was related to the Road Dogg.
We do now, though. That's the thing.
Yes.
As soon as he mentions it, it's like, oh my God, we just put a pair of dreadlocks and a little shit beard. That's him. Yeah, but like, he just does. He's like, you do. Your brother does this. You go do this, and he just. Oh God, it's embarrassing. It's so embarrassing.
Look, I don't have, because it's a Blitzkrieg match and because it's a Ray match, things happen too fast for me to be able to type a play-by-play here. I even wrote, this is going too fast to type. What I don't think
it goes that fast. I think, again, like, I'm not saying it's not too fast to type, but like, it doesn't inspire me, this match. It doesn't.
Look, it's faster than everything else on the show, we'll put it that way.
Oh, okay, first of all, a question, and I think I need to ask you this, and this maybe I'm on an island on this one. Ray without the mask, what's your opinion? No, I'm not saying Ray with the mask is not better. Of course he is. Ray with the mask is infinitely better. But I don't think he sucks without the mask.
Look, in terms of in-ring, no, but I think he looks like a tiny little baby. Like, he looks like Conan's son.
He looks like... Do you remember the Mario Brothers film? Remember he had the Koopas in it with the tiny heads? Yeah.
That's the thing that does it for me, is that he looks like... Look, for the level that WCW continued to push him at, whatever, fine. But for the level this guy should have been at for his talent, it's like, you can't have him without the mask. Like,
no.
He just would not be taken seriously high up the card.
He wouldn't be. And the thing is, like, again, his strengths were there. Don't strip him of one of his strengths. And he's clearly selling, he's able to sell merch with this.
I'll actually, do you know what? I'll link it into and put over a podcast featuring me that just dropped today. I was on the Must See Matches podcast again, talking about Gargano and Almas from TakeOver Philly. And my policy on taking off people's masks, luchadors' masks, is you damn well better look like Andrade if they take off your mask.
He looks so much better without the mask, doesn't he?
Like, that was, I think on that show, I called him an unreasonably sexy man. Like, that's how you better look. Like, you better look like him or Dr. Wagner Jr. when you take off the mask.
Some people just look better without the mask, and Andrade was one of them. Ray, I think I'm on island here, obviously, clearly, but I don't hate it. I don't think he's too bad with the mask. He's clearly much better with the mask, but I don't think I can buy him coming down the ring as a little chicken shit little punk who thinks he's in a gang. And
Look, I guess again, for the level he was actually at, if I was booking and the level I'd want somebody like a Rey Mysterio at, I would never take off his mask. So it just depends on what you're kind of the context you're looking at him in. Because again,
True.
it's not like they took off his mask and it's like, oh my god, he's hideous or anything like that. You know,
Yeah.
he's telegenic, he's expressive. You could say that if you're going to slot him firmly as a mid or undercard guy, that, you know, he has this youthful face about him that's going to get young people engaged in the product, perhaps. Now, I would say that's not nearly worth it as much as if they had actually properly merchandised the man, thinking about the millions and millions WWE would make on masks years later from him.
I'm just shocked how WWE actually got him. You know, like they don't get many people from WCW, let alone people who are Ray's size and stature. It's a miracle they actually were successful and let him be his
and that they
self.
never took the mask off him.
Yeah, they're not that stupid, like, you know. But
Yeah.
but did they give him the call of the soldier?
They did not.
They
They
did
did
not.
not. That's true.
I don't know. Have you ever seen any soldiers call like that?
I can't fault him. I
No.
can't fault him for that. Blitzkrieg does a cool corkscrew leapfrog. There's like some good kind of like they've got a bit of electricity with the crowd going back and forth. Blitzkrieg gets the heat, and what I thought was like, and this speaks to kind of what you were saying, Joey, is that when Blitzkrieg gets the heat, like uncharacteristically for how they've portrayed both these men, the match just slows the fuck down. And like, I like when this happens with certain guys. So like when Psychosis would play like the bully heel of the luchadors, and things would slow down and he'd take control, and he was just like a base and a mean bully to guys like Kidman or to Ray.
A modern comparison would be Penta. Like when he slows down, something, he looks vicious. He looks like he's gonna kick your fucking head off.
This didn't work for me. Ray reverses a powerbomb into a Hurricane Rana over the ropes to the outside. Diving nothing from Blitzkrieg meets a dropkick block by Ray. Ray fires up, hits his Rough Rider, and then a top rope Frankensteiner, which does the job. I don't think anybody's in any doubt what you thought about this, Joey. Disappointing.
It's just not my cup of tea compared to what Ray is capable of, and I think, like, for the time, I think maybe it would have been, you know, a lot better. But I remember even just like even WWE having like the odd, you know, cruiserweight sometimes that'd be better than this. Like, you know, to have Taka, you know, or Ray S.A. Milos, for example. Yeah, Aguila. There you go. And like, this is way better. The Rey Mysterio is capable of much better, but again, it's not bad. I'm not saying it's poor. I just think it was a bit disappointing when I seen Blitzkrieg and Ray. I was thinking, hey, this could really cook.
Yeah.
But no.
Both time and like they were just leaving a lot undone. Like they didn't really do the full amount that they are capable of, the two of them. Next up, we go back to see the hostage negotiations.
What a hostage negotiation it is.
I have to love that, like, so this is in like stereotypical like Skid Row, sort of like, definitely not somewhere on like a studio lot. It's one of those places that, like, I don't know about you, Joey, but I was looking at this and like, this is one of those places that is made to look grimy via set dressing rather than actually somewhere that's grimy.
I can't fault this at all for what it is. I enjoyed it.
Oh, look, it's what it is. I loved it. Starting off with Kevin Nash, as we all, when we show up to a hostage exchange, discreetly shows up in an enormous limo.
Yeah.
He arrives and Savage is already standing in the middle of the road going absolutely mad.
He's brilliant.
Sid Vicious in casual clothes,
like,
really.
Sid just turns up like that's the thing. If you didn't watch Nitro, I'm looking at this and myself, right? Why is Sid here? I know where this is going. Obviously, where the card is going, but at this particular time, I'm thinking Sid just rocks up. Why was he not Macho on his side when he's pacing to come down? Was he not trying to answer the cell phone there? Like, he just kind of rocks up in another Hummer suddenly.
Yeah, this is the whole thing, is that he was supposed to show up alone, and immediately Nash could see that he didn't show up alone. He's got his buddy with him,
and Nash gets out anyway.
There's something about Sid in normal people clothes that just shoots his mystique to shit for me.
See,
because
I'd rather him come out in softball stuff personally.
Yeah, like, he's like, it kind of. There was a moment on the last show where I noticed that him standing beside Savage, it's like, there's not that much difference in their height, and Sid is supposed to be a giant. And this is another one of those where I'm like, God, Sid doesn't look nearly the absolute, like, freak show attraction when he's wearing normal people clothes. I don't think that did him any favors. Well, nor would it have been if he was standing in the middle of the road in his ring gear. So I don't know what you do to get out of that. Like maybe his 2000s WCW look of just being like in the waist jacket and like mom jeans maybe would have done it. So there's various street toughs looking on as this verbal exchange happens.
I was convinced that these were like the hot cops from Arrested Development, you know, like he was.
Oh my God. Just blow a shotgun hole through the door when they're like, "Oh, stop, police!" All it was missing is like a man's arm flying off in the middle of it, and that's why you never exchange hostages. Goddamn J. Walter Weatherman. So yeah, Sid starts off the fight by doing the world's most telegraphed swing with the belt, misses. Nash has the upper hand on them until, very specifically, a man that in some ways resembles Sting attacks.
Jeff Farmer's like, hey, that's my gimmick.
Yeah. They grab a girl from the limo, and you can already see where this is going.
Oh, isn't it? It's very clearly not Gorgeous George.
Yeah, 100%. They grab a girl from the limo and speed off in the Hummer. Then we go to our main event, which is Rick Steiner versus Buff Bagwell for the TV title. Rick questions whether Buff is indeed in possession of the stuff, and says, "Why don't I come in the ring and knock the hell out of you, boy?" Very quickly, Steiner tears up the mat and pile drives Buff, then drops him on the rail. They're doing the thing which is like basically how all Buff's matches are laid out now, is that the heel tries to break his neck again.
Listen,
super cool.
I love that, like, just from an aesthetic point of view, Rick Steiner is a big enemy nowadays of the LGBTQ contingency when he's dressed like this.
Yeah, honestly, right?
Like he would have thought he was an ally just based on how he's dressing here, but no, he's. But then again, when you listen to him talk, you think, yeah, that's.
I was like, we've rung this bell a number of times in terms of references on the show, but he's very much. I'm looking for something that says "Dad likes leather." You mean leather, Daddy? Oh, there is such a thing.
We're just gonna keep going to boy. He's that well as him today. We just need someone dressed in blue today, and we'd be right.
Rick is off to the gothic asshole in this gear, that's for sure. So yeah, they're doing the thing where, like, look, I like the thing where, like, if a guy has an injury, that the heels work on that I have no problem with. But it's the going from 0 to 90 where, like, almost immediately the first stop is a pile driver on the concrete. It's like, that's something you do deep into a match. Like, that's a big, like, that's, we're calling out the stretchers sort of thing. Like, you don't do that as your opening salvo. They've
nowhere to go following that. And again, but considering
there's nowhere to go, and they do in fact go nowhere.
They do, and like, let's be honest here, like, Buff is very limited. Rick at this stage in his career is extremely limited. This was never going to go anywhere. Buff the toilet.
Buff is limited post neck injury, but he is fucking steamboat compared to fucking Rick Steiner in 1999. I'll tell you that.
I can imagine Vince McMahon didn't see this match pre-invasion, and like, you know, like, if he sees this match, he's not giving him Booker that time. Things could have worked out so much differently. You know, Buff is he is charismatic. He has something. Don't get me wrong. He is a likeable goof in certain extents. I love his overconfidence. Like, I love his entrance to the ring. So many people don't play to the crowd when they're walking to the ring the way he does. It's not something that's commonly done these days, at least. But he's got his strengths, and his strengths aren't wrestling.
Much as I appreciate what they're kind of like, that they're going for something with him at the moment, I do still pine for him and him and Scott Steiner as, like, upper mid-card goofs.
But they were great together. They played so well off each other. They had great chemistry. And, like, Buff Bagwell, he is, like, you know, the guy behind the charisma here in the crowd is a bit of a dork. You know, he is, you know, at the end of the day. So, you know, it's a natural fit for him. But
that kind of character works better when it's a smarmy heel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But look,
it's just one of those things that, like, you look at Buff Bagwell, and he is, like, I always felt like he just never really thoroughly found his real place in professional wrestling. You know, like, he had something, but He was never going to be that guy. He was going to be a work rate guy that's going to be main eventing. He's never going to be that guy unless some things dramatically changed from his neck injury. But he's a guy I always liked. He was a bit of a guilty pleasure. I love his theme music. I love his look. He's just there's something about him I don't know. I was always kind of warm to the guy.
Yeah. Look, he's testament to the fact that like pro wrestling, especially on television, is often more than just the bell to bell. Brian Alvarez used to say that like pro wrestling is the art of taking in a mobile stiff and making you think he's the best wrestler that ever walked the earth. And like Buff Bagwell's appeal is definitely like in that school of thought. I think like he can't do a shit in the ring anymore.
Like if Jungle Boy or Sammy Guevara had probably more of his sort of attributes, they could have been more more appealing in this like sort of 4 pillars 4-way, but they kind of lack in them sort of way to connect to the crowd, where Buff Bagwell probably at this stage in his career just cannot connect as a wrestler in the ring.
So Buff is really struggling going through a break, and then we return to rest holds. Yay! That's what we really wanted in this match. Buff makes a comeback during which Rick is not much interested in selling. Stop me if I've heard that one before. A gut wrench and a charge into the corner from Rick. Buff recovers. He goes for the blockbuster, but as he's on top of the ropes, David Flair comes out looking like Prison Mike from The Office.
Prison Mike, that's a good show, man. That's a good show.
In a fucking dumbass bandana, and the fucking stun gun is back. Like, I saw Nash with the stun gun in that Nitro recap, and I was like, please God, don't let the stun gun be back as a thing. But unfortunately it is. He uses the stun gun on Buff, and Rick wins. I mean, again, I don't think there's any shock here, but what did you think of the main event here before we get to the real main event?
It was lacking. Definitely lacking. Again, David Flair has no place really being in anywhere near the wrestling business, and especially, I'm it's just not called for. The match was bad enough as it is without a fuck finish. I'm glad it's over.
Yeah. It ends, but then we get an almost MCU style postscript of this
crescendo, the climax, yes. What we all came here for, the big payoff.
As it's revealed, they're back in the car, they're heading away from the hostage exchange, and I'm sure you were blown away by this shock.
Didn't see it coming.
Turns out it was Tori under the sack the whole time. It wasn't Gorgeous George.
They didn't realise this during the car journey.
Yeah. And they didn't immediately check on site or on the car. They got to another location, stopped, and then took her out, and then took the hood or whatever off.
Does, and again, but she has similarities to Gorgeous George in the fact that she's female, but they look like completely different women.
Yes. If you are, dare I say, a sexist, you would think they are identical. They are blonde, generously proportioned women.
Voluptuous is the word you're looking for.
What?
Vince McMahon's voluptuous. I love that word.
Yes.
It's the only person I've ever really known to use that word repeatedly.
So she declares that Nash is much smarter than you. Now, I think that may be the dumbest line in the whole thing, because if I was Savage, I would have done what they apparently didn't, which would be, hey, look, Nash has just handed us a hostage. Now we have our own.
But Nash doesn't give two shits about Tori. He's,
babyface Nash doesn't give a shit, is willing to give away a human life.
Oh, man.
Just for yucks. To get his belt back. So that's the end of Thunder episode 69. Nice. Joey, you are the co-host, so you have the responsibility of giving your overall thoughts on the show and your winners and losers of this episode.
Well, the winner is definitely me, because I got to come on this show. That's first and first.
Flattery will get you everywhere, my
friends. Yes, it will. The winners of this is Eddie Guerrero. First of all, it's hard to. This guy is, to quote Cody Rhodes, he's undeniable. Even when he's at the lower end of the card, if he's given shit, he'll make something work with it. The guy he's looking great. He's cut. He's in shape. He's not exactly 2003 Eddie Guerrero at this stage, but he's looking in great shape. He's quick. He's agile. He has this presence and intensity that some people just will never have. You can't buy that. He is just, it's a shame that he's only in a really sort of basic match in this card. It's grand, it's nothing inoffensive, it's fine, but there's nothing really inspiring on this card, bar the wrestler crap of Macho Man. Macho Man was an absolute MVP. Like, his acting skills, his delivery, his complete confusion. It's just, you cannot watch this and not enjoy it. He's perfectly cast in this ridiculous charade of hostages and trade-offs and swerve kidnappings. It's just, man, this is so bad it's good. This is why we watch Thunder.
Yeah, for sure. It was like, in that way, it was one of the better ones we've done in a while, so I appreciate that. I don't know how they're going to bring this shit into land for the pay-per-view, but I'm along for the ride anyway.
Like, just when you're watching some wrestling sometimes, like, if it's so boring, that's when it's bad. This was not boring. I was captivated every time Macho Man was on screen. Every time Kevin Nash had like a sultry sort of, heel promo as the face, it was just, this is what we came to see. This is what wrestle crap is at its best. It's cheesy, it's low rent, it's poorly done, and it just shouldn't work, but yet it makes me laugh, it makes me smile, and therefore I come away entertained.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The finish counter, brought to you by Ludwig Borga, gives this 6 matches with 4 clean finishes and only 2 interference leading directly to a finish. Thank you all so much for listening to another episode of Days of Thunder. We'll be back on the free feed in 2 weeks. We'll be back next week at the Patreon, alargemanappears.com. 5 Europeans gets you an extra 2 to 3 podcasts a month minimum at the moment. So check that out, and we'll see you again very soon. Joey, before we wrap up completely, I want to give you the last word here. Hit us up with any plugs. Where can people find you? Where can they check out what you do?
I'm usually just a Voices of Wrestling contributor at the moment. The odd article here and there, nothing crazy, but hopefully when the babies are a bit older, I'll get back to the podcasting game and be able to have some more lovely in-depth discussions about the wonderful world of professional wrestling.
Yeah, well, we're absolutely going to have you back on this show, so you definitely have a standing invite, but you may want to use those opportunities earlier rather than later as this thing starts to careen off the cliff. Both the podcast and World Championship Wrestling, I mean.
The better this gets is by how WCW gets worse, and you're going to have plenty of villains, my friend.
Plenty to talk about, that's for sure. But thank you so much, sincerely, for myself and Lee for joining the show this week, Joey. I think it was a fun chat. Like I said, we'll definitely have you back. And for everybody else, thank you very much for listening, and we'll talk to you very soon. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone, for listening to another episode of Days of Thunder. Days of Thunder was produced by Lee Malone and edited by me, Dave Ryan. To keep up to date with the show and find all the ways to listen to us, you can follow us on Twitter at WCW ThunderPod, or click the Linktree link in our Twitter bio or in the show notes. I am at The Day to Dave on Twitter, and Lee is at Malone_713. Days of Thunder is a part of the Voices of Wrestling podcast network. Follow the VOW network anywhere good podcasts are sold for more fine podcasts than you can shake a stick at. Thanks.
Hola, my name is Ricardo. I am the host of the Lucha Jovers podcast here in the Voices of Wrestling podcast network. We are a Spanish-speaking show dedicated to discussing and analyzing pro wrestling from all across the world. From AEW to CMLL, we talk about American wrestling, Japanese wrestling, and of course, Lucha Libre. If something big happened in the pro wrestling world, we will talk about it. So if you know Spanish or have a friend that knows Spanish or want to practice your Lucha Libre pronunciations, go listen to the Lucha Jovers podcast right here in the Voices of Wrestling podcast network. Nos vemos por ahí.
Hello, do you like New Japan Pro Wrestling? Are you a Shin Nihon freak? If so, check out the Super J-Cast with Joel and Damon on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.
And even if you fucking hate New Japan Pro Wrestling, listen to the Super J-Cast anyway. Not just for our great show reviews, analysis, and pastrami sandwiches, but there's also usually some dick jokes somewhere in the obligatory opening 30 minutes of absolute nonsense we chat about every single week. That's the Super J-Cast for all the best talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling, crisps, and pornography.